Yeah, Varsha, can you hear me?
Hi, Sajjad, I can. Good
Okay.
morning.
Let me know when to start.
I think we can start in 2 minutes or so. Yeah,
Sure.
thanks.
Hi Sajad, good morning.
Morning, Pratmesh. Okay, hi guys. Good morning to everyone. I think we can start now. I welcome all of you to the session. In case if anyone has any issues with respect to my voice, do let me know. I have shared my screen, so I hope everyone is visible. Everyone is able to see my screen and they have clarity on my voice. All right. Before we start,
Yes.
today's topic is deployment, and we will see what do we talk about that. What are the concerns which we are going to discuss today? But before we move ahead with that, I'll just briefly try to introduce myself. Some of you already know me, some of you might not. I'm Sajad, which who is basically working as a data science manager currently with Trafigura. Trafigura is a commodities derivatives trading firm. I have been in this field for around 9 years now. Worked with multiple companies in different domains, including finance, e-commerce, retail industry. Also, I started working in my career with CSIR, which is a government research laboratory, also, and then I also had a brief stint for a couple of years with my own startup, also. So over this whole around 9 years, I have had my own share of experience with multiple different domains of data science with different problems, and I've seen like how data science has grown over the years with respect to of both technologies and in terms of the requirements. So I'm going to discuss those aspects also, and but to be very specific, like if I go 8 or 9 years back, when I started, at that point of time, data science was a lot and all those sort of things. But these days, data science has developed, or I would say rather much matured into something which is called as a full-fledged solutions. So when we talk about full-fledged solutions, so all the aspects of software engineering has also come into data science, and that's where something what we call as deployment comes into the picture. We'll talk a little bit more about it, a particular specific terminology which has become popular in the last few years is what we call as MLOps, which is machine learning operations. It's a parallel thing which you can compare with DevOps. All right, so we'll talk all about this. All right, yeah. So now, having said that, let us discuss this term. What exactly do we mean by when we say that deployment? All right. So, just to give you an idea in terms of what we are going to do today is we'll start with the generic understanding of what data science is. So, I mean, the basic assumption is we all know what data science is, but we will see like how the data science like life cycle is. When we say life cycle, what we mean is basically we will try to see. Uh, when we use the terminology data science, does it include just the modeling part, or does it include a lot of other components? If it includes a lot of other components, what are those components? Then we will try to see like how those data is being flown. All right, so we will see the data flow and all those sorts of things. All right, and then we will see that in the whole data science life cycle, deployment forms an important part of it. All right, so we'll try to understand that. Once we understand that it is an important part, we will also try to understand why do we need it, when do we need it, how to do that. All right, so we will see all the 5W1H things. So 5W1H is basically what we call in the journalistic world as who, what, when, where, why, and how. All right, so we'll try to answer all these questions related to deployment. All right, and then we are going to see a couple of use cases, like we'll try to analyze like if this is a particular case scenario. So we will see like how the can deployment play a role here. What kind of deployment? When we say deployment, does it mean just a series of steps which everybody needs to perform? We will see that it is not the case. It means something different in different scenarios. So like what are the things to be considered while doing the deployment? What are the challenges? What are the problems? We will see all of these. All right, and then I'll try to share my own personal experiences. And at any point of time during the whole discussion, anyone having any questions or queries or even comments, you are welcome to share that. All right, so do not feel the need that you just need to ask the questions at the end of the sessions. Even during the sessions, whenever you have anything which you could not understand, or if you have something to add, or you want to share some of your own experience, anything related to this topic, you can shoot your questions by unmuting yourself, or you can write it in your chat. All right, okay. So when I was talking about the data science life cycle, this is what I say. So typically when we say data science, like I mean, any project which we are dealing with in our company or organization or somewhere else, uh, this might be one of the ways how the whole data science life cycle could be like for a particular project. Now this is something not which is generic in nature. It's not very specific to each project, and it is not necessary or standard that every project is going to go through the same life cycle. All right, so it can vary from project to project. Some project might have a few more components, some project might have a few less component, some might be a little bit more complex than this also. All right, so it's not always necessary that the every machine learning project or data science project will have all of these components in the same sequence flow. But they don't take it as a standard or something. But what I'm trying to show you here is this is kind of this is kind of the data flow which will happen at least in most of your projects. All right, so more or less, not to be very rigid here, but more or less this is how the data flow is going to be. So we can collectively bucket them into these four groups. All right, and the first group is what we can call as the planning and project setup. All right, the second is basically what we call as related to the data engineering, or you can say data collection, data labeling, And then obviously comes the next most important component, which we are all always interested in, which we call as the core machine learning development, training, testing, and all those sorts of things. All right. So you can name it whatever you want. So I would typically name it as a modeling or training and debugging. And finally, what we call is as development or deploying or testing. All right. So yeah, this could be like one of the one of the buckets in which we can classify that most of the data science project might fit in. Again, repeating, it is not necessary or mandatory or standard for every project to be fit into this structure. All right, but more or less they are going to, like, there are going to be projects which can have a few more steps. Like maybe we can have a project where we will have to do a lot related to data engineering within like something related to processing, or there could be projects where there could be some domain ontology information which can be clubbed in with the training data, training and all those things. So there could be many things. All right. So we'll not go into that details. So considering a generic structure, generic setup of machine learning project, we'll assume that if a data science project consists of these, all right, and we will try understand like within each what are the different components which we usually do. All right. Again, these blocks again is are not standard, so it's again not necessary that every project will have these components in terms of planning. It's not necessary. Like in terms of planning, we can have like multiple other things also which we should consider. All right. So we'll try to see. Okay. Now, we'll not try to go into the details of each blocks because that is not the core aim of this session. So our aim is not to understand the overall life cycle of the project. Our aim is to understand the deployment. But as you can see, among all these four buckets, deployment and testing is one of the components. And our aim today is to understand the importance of this particular block. All right. And also, we would like to understand not only just the importance of this block, but we will also like to understand how this take place, what are the different things around it, what do we do, when do we do deployment, how do we do deployment, what are the frameworks available, which infrastructures are available. All right. And we'll see all those sorts of things. All right. Now, just to give you a very brief idea in terms of how this overall flow of data could be. So, like typically, whenever you deal with a machine learning project or data science project, if you are in an organization, you will typically be first working with certain stakeholders. All right, that stakeholder could be an external client, like if you are a services company like TCS, Infosys, Cognizant, Accenture. It could be like an external client with you whom you are going to interact. All right, and or other scenarios, like if you're working with some company which has their own in-house problems statements, right? So there your stakeholders could be some internal stakeholders also. So whoever is your stakeholders, obviously the first thing you should do is you are going to have a discussion with them. And when you have a discussion with them, they'll come up with certain problem statements. When they will come up with certain data sets which will say like this is what they want to use and this is what they want to do. At times those problem statements might not be very clear also. All right. So there are in fact there are a lot of times when a data scientist not only has to just solve the problem but also formulate the problem. And that is why this first block define project goals. So it's very important for you to understand what kind of data exists, what kind of problems could be potential problem statement which could be solved, and then defining your exact problem statement, like what do you want to solve right now. It could be an evolving or iterating process also, and that is why I said that this process flow is not standard. So it could be like this definition of the problem statement can happen after maybe doing the data processing. So or maybe you did the definition of the project while starting, but after the data pre-processing you found out that there is something more to it, so you come back and fine tune this. All right. So these things can keep on happening anyways. So, but more or less, you always need to have some specific problem statement which you want to solve. All right. So you need to define that. You need to define your goals. You need to define your objectives. And then once you define that, obviously you are going to evaluate. So for evaluating, first thing you need is how are you going to evaluate the overall project? And for that, you need to set like certain metrics. So let's say if I'm trying to solve a problem related to churn prediction. So I know churn prediction comes under the bucket of maybe classification. So something like a precision or recall could be a good matrix for me. While if I'm talking about a house price prediction, so maybe something like an RMSE score might be a good score there. All right. So depending on what kind of problems you're solving, you should select certain metrics. Not only you should just select certain metrics, sometimes you can come up with your own matrix also. Like if the problem statement is such where the standard metrics like accuracy, precision, or RMSE doesn't make sense, you can define your own custom metrics also depending on the overall information about the project. All right. So either you can select or define, or you can do a combination of all this. All right. And then you need to define certain baselines. What we mean by baseline is basically whenever we talk about metrics, we are talking about with respect to a particular model. That is, whatever models which you are going to develop, you are going to develop that model, you are going to check the performance of that particular model. All right. Now, whenever you deal with any data science or machine learning project, this is this thumb rule that you should always have something what we call as a baseline model. All right. Now, what exactly is a baseline model? A baseline model is basically a simpler model, a very which could be coming out of just common sense or simple rules, which your model should always be able to beat. All right. What do you mean by this? And what I mean by this is something like this. Let's say we are talking about a churn prediction. All right. So churn prediction, we are trying to predict like how many employees are going to quit over the next few months. All right. So whenever we want to do that, we can always have a simple baseline model which the model should be able to outperform. What that baseline could be, we can simply check that in the last 3 years, how many employees in average quit, right? So let's say we found out that 30% of the employee quit every year. So for each model, for each let's say for each line, we can say like if we just simply just throw a dice, and or maybe just select a random number, and that random number, if it gives greater than something, and if it's less than 0.7, we give some other prediction. So this could be one of our baseline model where we simply just give 30% probability to one class, 70% probability to other class that it is not, the person is not going to exit. All right. So this could be one, so a very simple model which could be a baseline model. Or a baseline model could be a simply rule based model also. So rule based model could be a simple, like let's say we just simply just by domain knowledge or general knowledge, we know that typically an employee who is more than 3 years old in the company are more prone towards leaving the company. All right. So it's a simple model. We simply say that if the employee in the current company tenure of employees greater than 3 years, exit, otherwise not exit. So these kind of simple models could be your baseline model, and you can check the performance, and your actual model should always be able to beat these in simpler models which we call as baseline models. All right. Next is, once you define that, you should obviously, you need to discuss about the code base. When I say code base, what we mean by this is, in fact, I'll come back, and ideally this should be a part of the overall planning of the projects, or the overall design of the project. All right. Now, what do we mean by this is basically, uh, you need to start somewhere. So when you need to start somewhere, you need to start writing codes, and when you need to start writing codes, you need to uh, obviously, if you're working in an organization, you might be having something like version control system, so let's say a gate or something. So you will start a project directory there. All right. Then you will need to define certain structure to that project. So depending on like how you're working within an organization, that can vary. Like some companies can have their own set of standard code base format, some might not have. So you are, maybe you have more flexibility on that aspect of it. Also, in machine learning, there are certain standard project structures which are coming in. So if you want, you can use that also. Right? So I mean, yeah. So that is basically the first thing which you will typically do in almost all machine learning or data science project. But as I said, this is not something which is rigid. You can always keep on changing and chopping. All right. Once you have initialized, once you have planned, so your project is ready to start, your objectives are there, your baselines are there, your metrics is ready, then next thing is, now you need to start. When you need to start means you need to work with the data. So that is the second aspect, or in fact one of the very important aspect of the overall project, which is basically related to the data. So there you will work with the data collection, data labeling. All right. Now again, there could be n number of steps within this. Like it could be related to simply just the data, reading a data from some simply just a file. So let's say your data is present in an FTP server, which is an Excel bunch of Excel file or text file. You can simply just read it. or it could be more complex than that, where you might need to connect to a certain database. So maybe your data is stored in some SQL or NoSQL or Elasticsearch or any other database where you need to read from. Or it could be more complex further, where maybe your data is actually in time series data or a streaming data. So maybe you need to some message broker system like RabbitMQ or Kafka or anything. All right. So I mean, like, depending on the complexity of how you are going to read the data, you need the correct infrastructure there, and that is one of the things which is very very important, which we typically take for granted most of the time. So as a data scientist, most of the time we have, because of our academic projects, we have data set given to us in the form of a nice Excel sheets or text files. We assume that this is how always it's going to be. It's not. All right. So in real world, your data is going to be stored or provided to you in form of real world tools. So that could be an FTP server, it could be certain database, it could be a SQL database, it could be a NoSQL database, or it could be given to us in form of API or FTP, or maybe sometimes streaming data also. All right. So depending on that, you need to decide on the tooling. All right. And then comes the most important part, which you are all familiar with, where we talk about the training of the model and development of the model. So after, let's say, you have done the data pre-processing, data engineering, then you will go ahead and do the core data science job, which is related to feature selection, feature engineering, designing the model. Let's say you decided that it's a classification problem, so maybe you started with some type of algorithm, let's say decision tree, random forest, XGBoost, and at the end of the day you settle with a particular type of model. You tune the hyperparameters. Once you tune the hyperparameters, you go back to the model, you take the feedback, and you do all this process. You keep on repeating this. All right. So you do all those k-fold validation and all this. Once you are done with all of these, let's say you are now happy with the model, you think that this model is good and ready to go, we are happy with the performance, this is the right model, then the most important step comes, which is basically most of the times, before, if I go 5 6 years back, a data scientist will typically be happy at this stage, where they will say that, okay, now we have designed the model, it's performing well, it's giving us good predictions, we are done. All right. And then they will simply just hand it over to towards some software engineering team, and then they're happy. All right. But this is where things start becoming tricky. Why it becomes start becoming tricky is, even once you have developed a model which is good, which is great, which is performing well, which is satisfying the needs of the customer, but it's of no use until and unless you can convert into a delivered solution, or until and unless you can convert it into a software. All right. Because irrespective of how good your model is, your model still is in some code, or maybe some Jupyter notebooks or things like that. That is something which you cannot provide to anyone, so anyone else cannot use your model. All right. So if someone else, because like if you have developed everything in, let's say, Jupyter notebook, your model is great and all, or even if you have like a code based project, Python directory and everything, what do you expect the client to do, or the stakeholder to do? Do you expect them to install all the software toolings in their system and then run your project manually like you are doing in your current computer? Do you expect that? You can't expect that, because that is something which you don't expect from the stakeholder. The stakeholders are there to do something simple. They just want to utilize the information. That is why they have hired you. All right. So that is where the aspect of deployment comes in. And in case of deployment, what you need to do is, you need to provide the overall solution in a simpler fashion, in some standard fashion. All right. And that's where deployment could be very important. It could be done in many ways. Like, you can convert this overall thing into some sort of software which someone can simply just install. So like a GUI based software, you can convert this. So an executable file, if you convert everything into an executable file, you provide the stakeholders with that executable file, they simply just install this software and do not install anything else. And then the GUI, nice GUI pops up for them, and then they can maybe, let's say, click on some button, select certain data, select certain configuration, and boom, they get the prediction. Or it could be provided to them in the form of an API. Let's say, whenever they want to get the prediction, they can just simply hit an API, call a REST API, and then they get the prediction. Or it could be provided in the form of a dashboard, web dashboard, which you have created. Your model is hosted in your own server, while the dashboard, you can just simply provide the link of the dashboard to the stakeholder, and they can just hit that URL and they simply just get that dashboard and they can use that. All right. Or it could be provided in any other format. You can create a scheduled service where maybe the application is they want the prediction of 10,000 data sets every day, every day at 10 a.m. All right. So maybe it's a batch service which you can create, which takes in data from a particular location, does the prediction, and maybe dumps the output in some other location. So there could be n number of ways how you can convert this initial solution into a delivered solution. Obviously, the way you are going to do that is going to depend on the type of project which you have, the end application, the data, the stakeholders requirement, and everything. All right. So there could be no standard way of defining deployment, like this is which how you can do deployment. So like a deployment could be a web-based deployment, a deployment could be an in-house deployment, a deployment could be in the form of creating a REST API, a deployment could be in the form of creating dashboards or anything. All right. Or it could be simply creating some standalone softwares. All right. So depending on the type of project, the requirement, the stakeholders, and the data, you are going to select this and decide this. All right. We are going to talk a little bit more about these aspects, like what kind of deployment strategy should we select, and that is very important that we need to understand our overall project. All right. Fair enough. So before we move ahead, anytime, any questions, if someone has, you are always, as I said earlier, you are always free to ask. All right. So if you have any queries related to this, you can ask right now. Okay. Now, once we have decided about this, we have decided our deployment, like, okay, yeah, this is going to be our deployment strategy. Next, which is basically I'm trying to answer what, right? So we have talked about the what strategy. Then next step is like how can we do that? All right. So there are many options available to us, as I was talking about. So all these options, again repeating, these options which you can see on the left side or on the right side are available to you. Which one to select is basically the job of the data scientist plus the software engineers or the DevOps guys, people who are present in the team. All right. So now the selection of these toolings, selection of these infrastructure, selection of the process methodology is going to depend sometimes by choice, sometimes by the given constraints by the project, sometimes by the given constraints of the company or infrastructure available, sometimes because of the requirement of the project. So it could be anything, right? All right. So it's not mandatory that a particular type of project will always be using one set of deployment strategy. It can depend on the overall current infrastructure of the company also. All right. So the same project can be deployed on premise also. The same project can be deployed maybe over an AWS server also. All right. Now, depending on how the company sees themselves, whether they want to invest in a cloud service provider or not, whether they have more infrastructure available on premise, or whether they, what kind of clients they have, if they have, like, if the end application is more technical users, they might want something which is providing individual softwares, while if they have clients whom with whom they are working in a, let's say, service based model, so there they might want to work in a SaaS based model, software as a service, or things like that, and so and so on. All right. So that's what I wanted to say. So these are some of the common strategies which you can select. All right. And these strategies are very popular, like we typically call them as something like a software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. All right. So SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, and a lot of others. All right. I've just shown with this the diagram which you see on the right hand side. You can understand. So in case you are not very aware about these strategies, like SaaS, PaaS, infrastructure, and all this is how you can understand them. All right. So what do we mean is, like, whenever we talk about on-premise versus infrastructure as a service and so on, on-premise is basically having everything locally. So everything, right, starting from the server till the data and the applications, everything is our own. So right. So if that is the case, it could be an on-premise. This has been very popular till maybe a few years ago, especially in defense industry and finance industry. Most of the time we used to have our own on-premise servers because of security, obvious security issues. So a lot of financial companies typically usually used to have, I would say the word used rather than now, The reason being, now people are migrating, now people are switching towards other alternatives also, right? But most of the time they used to prefer on-premise servers where they try to own everything because they don't trust anyone. All right. So if that is the case, you can have your own on-premise servers and you can deal with everything in the on-premises. Now, as I said, in on-premises, we have everything in, we include everything on-premise, right? Starting from the server, storage, networking, till the end application, the end data, the runtime and everything. All right. But then people have come up with a lot of services. Services means what happens is, if you're working with on-premise, this makes sense. Like, you might say that, okay, it's an initial investment where we need to buy our own servers. All right, so we need to buy our own machines, we need to develop our own networking system and all these. But sometimes this helps in a way that this is a one-time investment. So once you invest, once a particular company invest in this in a one time, then they can use it forever. Like in terms of servers, obviously they need to buy more servers whenever they want to scale, but the networking and networking part, the software parts, these are like one time investment thing. All right, so sometimes companies do that. All right. Now it will make more sense if the company has higher scale. So like, if I'm talking about a company with 10,000 employees, then it might make sense for them to develop all these infrastructure on premise. All right. But if there is a startup of 10 employees, it doesn't make sense for them to do all of these themselves, because then it will be like investing in something which is not scalable. All right. So again, depending on the strategy, business vision and scale, you can decide that. Now, even for large companies, more recently, people have tried to move away from this. The reason being uh, that it obviously comes with its own inherent challenges. The inherent challenges is obviously because you need to manage everything on your own. All right. So, although you might be saving up on some cost related to the server, like maybe you think that you bought a machine and you are done, but then you still need to pay the electricity bill of that servers, right? And then also you need to manage those servers. For managing, you need to hire more people who are going to look into it. There would be different issues related to the server, networking, security and all these. All right, so you need to manage all of these. All right, so since you need to do all of these, sometimes people say, okay, how can we get rid of this? All right, so there comes the concept of services, and services could be on many forms. In its most advanced form is what we call a software as a service, where we outsource everything to someone else. So let's say there are some third party who does all of these things for themselves, and they just provide the software as a service. Now, depending on the company, depending on the project, that company itself could be the software as a service model, where the company developed the. So here, if you have everything, let's say we are developing a churn prediction. If someone else has already developed this churn prediction and providing you as a tool where you just hit an API and you get the output. So that is basically a software as a service. Internally, the person or the company who is providing you the software as a service, that person or the company is taking care of all of these. All right. So there is definitely a networking layer, there is definitely storage, there is a server where the project is deployed and everything. All right. There is a data flow and all this, but all these are taken care of. All right. So what you need is, you just need to use that software as it is. All right. A software of example of software as a service you can see in daily life everywhere. Like, let's say you want to do a word to PDF conversion or PDF to word conversion. Maybe if you are not able to do locally, what you do is you go ahead on Google and search like PDF to word conversion, and then you upload your file and then you download your word file. That is prime example of software as a service. But that does not mean that that conversion is happening over internet. No, what is happening is, there is some company, there is someone who has created a software, and that software is deployed in some machine, some physical machine. All right. The website where you can upload is simply just a networking layer which is connecting you to that machine, where you're providing your input data, and whatever the output is generated by that software is again being given back to you through that website. All right. So that is a prime example of software as a service, and that could be many more examples. Sometimes people say that, okay, software as a service, like we are outsourcing completely, so we don't have the option to customize. So what if we go one step backward and we want to develop the software ourselves, like we want to develop the model ourselves, but we don't want to have the hassle of doing the rest of the things. All right. And rest of the things is basically taking care of the server, networking, and all this. That is something which we don't want. That is where platform as a service comes in. All right. So it's very important that you understand these nuances, the differences between them. And within platform as a service, it's things like we will develop our own software. Let's say we have developed this churn prediction model. So we want to develop our own churn prediction model, but we want to deploy it on some server, but we don't want the hassle of the server, maintaining the server, maintaining the networking, maintaining the security and all that. All right. So there are companies who are providing you these services where they are taking care of all these related to the operating system, middleware, runtime, server management, storage, networking. The only thing which you are concerned is the end software or the end application and how your data flow is going to be. All right. So this is what we call as platform as a service. Some example of platform as a service are like there is Heroku, there is AWS Elastic Beanstalk, which provides these facilities, and it's actually quite popular these days. Like it's in fact you will see that if you want to deploy something on Heroku, you can do it in 10 minutes. Like there are 4 steps. You click, and then your model is deployed. So you don't have the hassle, and it is being served. All right. You want to scale, you just go to the dashboard, you just put in certain numbers, you scale it to from 1 to 2 or 3, you just type in those numbers and your model is scaled. So you don't have the hassle of maintaining, writing the infrastructure code, writing the codes related to the tooling and infrastructure. All right. So that is something which is very useful. That is why platform as a service has become very important. All right. Next thing which comes in is like sometimes people want more flexibility than platform as a service also. So that's where infrastructure as a service comes in. All right. So what we mean by this is sometimes like in case of Heroku or Elastic Beanstalk, we still don't have the flexibility to manage the infrastructure itself. All right. So when we say we don't have the flexibility to manage the infrastructure itself, what we mean is maybe our project is not that simple where we have just one application which needs to be run. So if it is just one application which needs to be run, we can do that over Heroku or Elastic, AWS Elastic. But what if it is more complex? More complex means let's say our application is a combination of many applications where there needs to be a certain communication between the project, intermittently between the different codes, and then they dump the code in some database, the data output intermittently or temporarily, and then it needs to read, it needs to schedule. All right. And then there are logics written to that and all those. So if you want to have all those sorts of flexibility, that's where infrastructure as a service comes in. All right. Kriti asked related to how the data is managed in software as a service. So in software as a service, you don't manage the data. In software as a service, you simply just take the software and use it. So what you do is you just give the data and you get the output. Like in case of, as I said, like in case of the website which you use for PDF to Word conversion, you don't have to deal with the training data and everything. All right. So you don't know on what training data the data was developed or how it was developed, what is the data flow. What you do is simply you just use it. So for as a user, for you are simply just using the tool, you are just interacting with the external way, however they are exposing their software. And in that case they might be exposing it as a dashboard, in other case they might export it as an API, or in other case they might export it as in some other way. All right. In platform as a service, you have the flexibility of working with the data and the applications, where let's say we are talking about Heroku, we are deploying the model. So when we are deploying the model, we have the data itself, like we have trained our model on our own data. We are giving our prediction based on what data we receive. So how do we read data is something which is in our own flexibility. Like we can say that we can train the model, dump it and save it, let's say as a model file. All right. And maybe some pickle file we have saved it, and internal our project reads the model from a particular folder, or you can read it from some certain database. You can point it to certain database, or you can point it to somewhere else. All right. So that data flow is all in your control in platform as a service. All right. In infrastructure, a lot of other things also comes into your control, like something as I said, like if I want to have the flexibility of some backend also, and that backend infrastructure could be related to the middleware, runtime, operating system. Now a very typical example for you to understand in this is like, let's say we have an application which works well with in Windows, while if they have another application, another library which we have used for our model, which is only working on Linux. So in that case, if I want to go by this platform as a service, it should be very difficult, because we want to have the control on the operating system also here. All right. And that is why we would rather than having a very well customized way thing for us as a platform, we would rather like to have a control over the overall infrastructure. All right. So something like a typical cloud provider, any cloud provider like AWS, Azure, GCP, IBM, or any other cloud provider is very useful there. All right. And then we can decide which kind of service we want to use there. We will set up our own virtual machines. We will set up our own, let's say, AWS EC2 machine or Azure machines, compute machines. We will have our own way of deploying within that. We will have our own operating system within that. We will have our own database. We will interact among them. So we will have to manage all this. All right. How it will help is like what are the things which are which we don't need to take care is in terms of the machines virtualization itself. So like we can just use the virtual machines. We just talk about the operating system, but how the virtualization is created, what kind of software they're using to create those virtual machines for us, that is something which we don't need to take care. We will have a way of communicating within the machines. So the networking layer is something which we don't need to work on. All right. They will provide certain storage mechanism, like in EC2, like in AWS, they will have something. We have EBS, we have S3, we have other forms of storage, like in Azure, we have blob storage, Azure storage, and all those. We don't need to worry about that, how they're managing internally, like whether that storage is actually how they are stored. All right. So we just need to work on an abstracted layer of that. All right. So that these are few things which becomes easier for us. All right. We don't need to worry, but we have more flexibility here in terms. All right. The more flexibility you have, the more complex it becomes, and the more investment you require in something like this. All right. Okay. So now you might have some understanding in this, like in terms of like what do we mean by SaaS, PaaS, infrastructure as service, on premise, and all this. All right. So these are some examples given. Now, as I had said in the beginning, what you need to do is you need to first have try to understand what exactly is your requirement. It will be depending, as you can see, you can work with this model also, you can work with this model also. All right. Now, depending on what exactly is your requirement, like what is the end goal of the project, also how it is your team size, what, like if you have a team size of only 4 people, you cannot invest on developing an on-premise solution. You cannot have a separate guy dealing with networking, virtualization, and all this. All right. So there, something like maybe a platform as service will make more sense for you. While if you want to simply quickly prototype something means, let's say you just want to give some you want to develop this let's say, how do you say, some service which you want to provide to the client, and for that you need certain software which you don't want to develop yourself. There is some third party which is providing that. You just want to use that and provide it to the client. So there you might want to go for a software as service. While if you have a large team and you are developing a project for each, you have time also, like let's say 1 year, and there you want to develop an in-house thing because you want to have more control. So there something like infrastructure or a service or on-premise will make more sense depending on how the company envisions themselves. All right. So you need to make this decision always. All right. Okay. Now, having said that, now since we have an understanding now in terms of like what to deploy, how to deploy, what kind of infrastructure should we select, so we'll take certain examples. All right. And based on these examples, we will try to. So these are simply just scenarios, and I just what the aim of these different examples is basically to show you that given different scenarios and different problem statements, you should typically work with a different approach. All right. And that is how. So we don't want you to memorize this methodology, like what kind of methodology we are using. We don't want that. We want to develop this thinking capability, because this is just, we are only going to discuss 2 scenarios today, or maybe a few more, but there could be like 10 or 100, maybe 50 such scenarios which could be possible, and for each type of scenarios there could be different solutions. All right. So the idea is to give you the thinking capability, how the thought process works. All right. So what I'll do is I'll wait for 1 minute and I'll let you read this. All right. So I want you to everyone to just read this first and second paragraph. All right. Now don't read this last 3 points. All right. So just read first 2 paragraphs, and I want all of you to just think on yourself what exactly are you thinking related to the deployment? All right. So whatever comes to your mind in terms of deployment, just based on this is the scenario, this is the problem. I want you to do that first. All right. Then we'll come back and discuss this. All right. So I want everyone to take a minute and try to read these two paragraphs and think on your own what are the different components or important things related to this deployment, which you should think of. I hope all of you have read this. All right, so now all of you at least have read this. I want to know if someone wants to just share their thoughts in terms of given this scenario. Anyone who would like to explain what this scenario is and what comes to their mind in terms of deployment, like what are the things which they think is important here to consider.
First is the problem
Yeah, please go
statement.
ahead.
Hi, Sajid. Good
Yeah,
morning.
hi Nikhil. Go ahead.
Hi. So, first couple of things, step by step, I want to go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So, one is the what is the problem statement from they have from their model. They want to see that how it is well defined or well trained or not. So, they created a lead scoring model. So, out of the problem, they find out how to score that or the predict the model how it is specifically for the group of technical, because technical analysts have the lot of knowledge, but they only focused on the SQL queries like that. Okay. And once they told that, so so they want to take a sample of an analyst and put it in a bucket. So and they want to custom, I mean they put us in a situation they are as a customer and think in wisely. And each morning or the, I mean, every day if they ask, they have to create a I mean card operations to the database and put it as a BI tool to analyze that one.
Mhm.
Since they created the BI tool, okay, so because they know the BI, because they did the code SQL operations, and out of that the BI tool happened.
Mhm.
Okay, so if the model is created on that and they created the things, they just have to store in somewhere like you told the pickling one. So
Mhm.
they suppose store in the pickling, you have to deploy, then only they can, I mean the senior data scientist or the who design data scientist one, they want to know that how the model is picking from the, and they want to the score is getting the proper way. I mean if the trained model is good as a accuracy line on that, in the test also they will get the scoring of the lead scoring one.
Mhm.
And once they deploy that one only, they can get to know that, otherwise they will as a standalone type,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they are storing the details in the database as well.
Mhm. Good, very good, very good. Thanks, Nikhil. So I think
Thank
that's exactly what it is. So what Nikhil is trying to say here is we have the current problem, and I want to discuss certain more aspects related to this also. All right. So in this particular scenario, it was given to you is like there are certain set of analysts, all right, who knows SQL well. So let's say in your team there are 10 analysts who has very good knowledge of SQL, and the idea is to build a lead scoring mechanism. Lead scoring model is basically those analysts basically what they do is they work in sales. All right. So in those sales, like they have a list of different potential clients which they should call up and try to sell something. Let's assume that. All right. And when they try to do that, they have, let's say, 100 of list of 100 people or 10, maybe 1000 people. They cannot call everyone. All right. So if they just go by sequence, so then what will happen is they will call some people who are completely not interested, and they'll just waste their time on the phone calls. So can there be a machine learning model which can help them here in terms of generating a score for the lead? Like, can a machine learning model tell the salesperson or the analyst which whom to call first, depending on the probability of their being converted into a customer? All right. So that is what the machine learning's aim is. Now you have, let's say, developed this model. All right. So someone has developed this model where you have taken into bunch of parameters. So parameter could be maybe the customer's age, income, the profile information, their past history, and all this. Based on that, you think that maybe this customer is important, this customer is not important. All right. Or maybe you have generated some sort of scoring mechanism, like this customer is important with an importance score of 0.9 and so on and so on. All right. So this is the first step in trying to understand or selecting the deployment strategy, in understanding what exactly is the need. All right. Once you have talked about this need, the next thing which you should think about is how is it going to be, like who is going to be the user of your model. So as a data scientist, who is the customer for you? All right. So as a data scientist, your customer is not the end customer who is going to buy the software or anything. For you as a data scientist, your end customer or the stakeholder is the team of analysts who are going to use this. All right. So the team of analysts is basically your stakeholder. So this is the second step, which is very important for you to understand. That is, these are my stakeholders. Next thing for you to understand is how do these stakeholders work? What is their comfort level? All right. So there comes the information related to this technical analyst, that these technical analysts are very good or well versed with SQL. That gives you one hint in related to how to select the deployment strategy. All right. So one thing which you can think of is, since these are people who are going to do this, you can, one thing we can think of is we can serve the output of the model which is related, which is basically the score of each customer in some way to these guys. All right. So if we think about the options, there could be many options to provide this. One simple option to provide it could be like you can generate the output in an Excel file in terms of each customer, and then there is score, and you can mail these files to them. That could be one option. Second option could be you can generate this in some sort of files and maybe put it in some location. All right. And that location, it is understood or agreed with these analysts that you find the leads every day in the morning at 9 a.m. You will find a file at this location which contains the leads and their lead scores. All right. So that could be another option. Or there could be another option is, for each customer your model runs, and after running they update the stored value of the lead score into some sort of database. All right. And since you know that this team of analysts are also very good with SQL, so maybe rather than sending these files to them or this, you simply just, you have already have a made table, and you just dump the score on that particular table, and the analyst doesn't have to do anything related to you. So they don't directly communicate with you, they don't directly ask you for the score. They simply just check that table and take the output from that table. So you work with the table, they also work with the table. You dump the output on the table, they use the table. All right. So that gives you the third option of using it. All right. So what I'm trying to explain you here is the overall deployment strategy is going to be affected by the end stakeholder, the end project, and the end user. All right. And that is what we have seen here. Now, once you have decided on any of these three strategies, let's say for this case, given the scale and everything, we decided that we want to go ahead with the SQL strategy where we want to dump the output in an SQL. Now, how your deployment strategy should be? Again, you need to think of what you have finalized the end goal. The end goal is basically to dump the output in the SQL table. All right. The next thing which you will need to consider is what is the data you are using. So what is the data flow you have? All right. So the data flow you have is, now let's say you will say that, okay, the data is given to us in the form of Excel sheets. All right. So again, the data ingestion part is becoming important here for you in terms of selecting the deployment strategy. Next thing is, how often do you retrain the model? Do you retrain the model every day, or do you retrain the model, maybe just train it once and you are done? You are not going to retrain it at any time. So if that is the case, maybe you will do it offline and you will only think about the prediction part. But if there is always new data which comes in after every 10 days, you think that the data changes, so your model should be retrained, then your deployment strategy will also be affected by this. How do we get the new data? Is the new data being provided to us in the form of updating into a particular folder, or it is an ingestion mechanism, it is an streaming data, or whatever it is? All right, so you need to think about that. Next is, while doing the prediction, how the data will come. So while doing the prediction, how the data will come means, do you want to serve this in a way where someone will give you that this is the customer name, this is their ID, this is their profile, and based on that you need to give prediction? Or these things comes in batch wise fashion, like you get 10,000 customers list every day and you just need to select and find out the top 100 customers and provide it. All right, now if the end goal was such that where these technical analysts actually require maybe a web based dashboard where they can just write the name of the person, the age, income, and they based on the need prediction, then I might need to think about something in the form of a dashboard. And if I go by that approach, something which is very important there is the latency, because there you will have real time data, and for that you need real time prediction. All right, so you can see now my deployment strategy is being affected by the way I'm going to serve the end user. So if I'm going to serve the end user in a way where they can provide an input data and I provide the output for them, the latency becomes important there. That is, how many seconds do I take to give the prediction, that becomes important here. But if this, let's say if this was not the case, if the case was that we get 10,000 data in the morning, let's say 5 a.m. every day, and we just need to find out top 100. So there, maybe we just need to batch process all the 10,000 at a once. So we don't need to predict each sample at a once. So there we will just run a batch job and then you will just provide it to them. All right. So again, the deployment strategy, there may be something like let's say if I'm getting all the predictions in 10 minutes, versus 12 minutes, it doesn't bother me, because at the end of the day I'm going to provide this whole batch in some FTP, or just I'm going to dump it in some SQL table. There maybe the latency is not important, so my deployment strategy is again affected by this. All right, so this is basically what I wanted. So what I wanted here is I wanted to develop this thought process in terms of what the options are. So your options, your overall strategy, the end strategy is going to depend on n number of parameters. What are those n number of parameters? First is obviously the end user, who is going to, you should always do this, you should always identify that as a data scientist, who is your stakeholder. That stakeholder could be the end user of the overall project, or maybe it could be possible that your stakeholder is maybe another colleague of yours who is just sitting and developing the software. So maybe as a data scientist you are developing something, but the end tool is not the whole, simply the model. The end tool has many more components to it. So maybe there is a software engineering team who is just consuming your model to get certain output. So maybe your stakeholder is that software engineering team, and for that software engineering team, maybe the stakeholder, maybe the some other user. All right, so you need to always think about that. Next thing you should do is, given once you have decided who is your stakeholder, what form of output do the stakeholders can use? All right, and what's the easiest form, what's the most comfortable form of output they can have? So let's say if the end user was the software engineers, they might be very well versed or very comfortable in terms of using the output in form of an API. All right, so there you might want to serve your output, serve your model in the form of a REST API. While if the end user was maybe a simple layman, the end customer, there maybe it might make more sense that you provide certain dashboard to them. All right, while if the end user was something like this, where a team of analysts who are well versed with SQL but not versed with APIs, so there maybe your deployment strategy needs to be in such a way so that your output is basically creating the output and dumping it somewhere. So a batch wise process. All right, so depending on this end user, your whole overall strategy changes. All right, just like the end user, the next thing which you can think of is like how to serve the end user, and then you need to serve what are the important factors required here. So like as I said, given these two scenarios, in one scenario latency was important, while in another scenario latency was not important. So your deployment strategy will also depend on these. All right, so what are the important things which you need to consider? You will need to have to think about it. All right, so depending on the kind of project, the kind of end users, you will need to decide basically which factors are important to us and which factors are less relevant to us. All right, okay, let's have a look at some other example. All right. So again, just like before, I want to all of you to take a couple of minutes and read through this. So just read through the first scenario. All right. Just read through the first scenario. Okay. And again, think about what do you understand by this. So I want all of you to read to this through scenario one. All right. So let's. What if the scenario was not this lead scoring system, but this recommender system? All right. In this case, what is important? I want to hear some thought from someone in terms of what is important to us. What are the factors which are going to affect our deployment here, and all that. All right. Anybody wants to share their thought?
I can go ahead.
Yeah, Nikhil, go ahead.
Mm, uh, Shahid, I'll go for the three sections. Okay. In so first in the deployment in the recommendation system is, if you are consider the Flipkart, suppose for consideration for user, but you have to see that how the which type of user you are depending on this. If the scenario one, even scenario two, they have the same user but the different categorized things. If your scenario one is there, consideration, okay, so in the user is a new user, if the user is a old user, or user is a first time login user, means if first time user and the no user is those who sign up but never visited, those who sign up they are visiting first time. There's a two types. And another one is old user. So obviously old user have in the bucket list or the wish list over there, they have to go the cache memory, all the things. But if you see that scenario one, they are looking about the both the mobile and mobile and web applications, and they have to predict every on the fly level. They are not giving that if you are browsing the Flipkart, if you go for that any laptop section, if you want to choose the laptop, and if you choose the Lenovo Legion model, so automatically you will get that Lenovo Legion model Pro one, which is the newest one. Okay, so it is like that. If user is going user is going to log in and check that one, and it is on the fly they got it that information that user is looking for the laptop, and they can collect that data as a cache memory or the log memory, you can tell that, in the data. And on the they can generate immediately on the fly that yeah, he is looking for a laptop, we have to show that in that laptop things. But it is giving more headache to the deployment section, I mean deployment and the what it called that proper word I am not getting right now, but
DevOps team.
yeah, yeah. So it is more uh, give us a more impact to that deployment part, because every time if you see that go to the Lenovo and go to that another suppose household app, so they are changing that patterns. Okay, so in that the in the mixed patterns you can get it in that next third slot. Okay, so in that the model prediction might be affected for this one. Okay, so this is basically especially for the but that low, I mean old user. But coming the second scenario, if you go for that sign up and do the first time jump into the marketing side or things, because they want to know that which type of user is this one. It is basically a household type one, or the sometimes if you see that Nika, all the things, they will check that in the gender wise, it is a man or the woman. Okay, so they will calculate automatically that yes, he's a man. We have to show that in the next sign up only, we have to show that manly kind stuffs for beauty products. But if it is a female, then they will show you the first time things, so they will show that one. But if he is not a user, he is going as a guest. Okay, so that time if you go ahead, and obviously when you have to wish list, you have to put a email ID. Okay, so that time you have to go ahead and check that I mean, they have to give you the more benefit, so they want your email ID. In that email ID they can say you that yes, this is the products in have, if you want to get. In that time they want to they are training their models to know your wishes and know your requirements. So that's why they, so that the more Monday morning and the Friday morning. So this is a very vague if you tell that, because nowadays nobody is going to go and check that Monday morning and the Friday morning like that, Monday afternoon one. So I'm basically thinking that I have a question also, why you keep this scenario 2-1, because this is not the industry standard one also. Okay, and but I'll just go through the scenario one is a more facile, but yes, if it impact to the your server, all the things.
Okay, fair enough. So very well explained by Nikhil. Thank you. So the idea is not here to compare the scenario one and scenario two in terms of which one is better or which one is worse. Here, the idea was to you can have both the scenarios, and I'll give you examples where both scenarios work also. All right.
Yeah, sure.
But the idea is depending on the scenario, your strategy is going to change. What is important in scenario one versus what is important in scenario two change. So basically, what Nikhil said is like there we have a couple of scenarios here. What we are building is we are building a recommender system. All right. There are two use cases given here. One of the use cases, let's say you are building a recommender system where we need to make the recommendations on the fly. All right. And the second scenario is where we need to make the recommendations not on the fly, but somewhere in the past. And so there is not a real time prediction which we require in the scenario two. All right. So scenario one could be, you can take an example, as Nikhil has said, you can take Amazon, Flipkart, or any other such e-commerce website, where as you browse, you keep on getting the recommendations. So you browse, you click on something, and on next on the down you will see that things you might also like. You see that in Amazon also, you see that on Flipkart also. All right. Now Nikhil has very well segregated this into three buckets. So maybe Ideally this is not as simple as this. Ideally there are a lot many more factors, but yes, you can think of it like this. Like even within a Flipkart's recommendation strategy, which is all on the fly, there also you can have three types of user. You can have a new user, you can have an old user, and within the new user you can have a new user who has visited and we is going to do anything on the website, or another new user who doesn't do anything, or you can have a guest user or anything. The idea is, depending on the type of user, your recommendations can again vary. Like in case of an old user, I can have a historical information of the user. I know that the user has already bought maybe a black jeans, and the user has bought a mobile phone, and the user has bought maybe something, certain books. So I know the taste and preferences of that user based on their activity. So what I can do is, I can already have certain recommendations for that user even before the user logs into my system again. So what I mean is, I already, since the user has already done certain activity on my website, so I can have that user and I can already have certain recommendations based on the history. So whenever the user logs in directly without even them doing any activity, I have certain recommendations for them. All right, ready. There I don't need a real time prediction for that. In that, just that specific use case, in that specific use case of the old user in an e-commerce website, I don't need a real-time prediction. What I need is a batch processing. Maybe for that user, some predictions done and stored somewhere. While in the other scenario, even when the user logs in, if I want that the recommendations vary in real time when the user does certain activity. That means is, this is again some decision you need to make as a business. Like in the business, if I think that I am only going to recommend what is to recommend to the user based on based on his or her history, and not change it based on their activity every day or every minute or every second. So what it means is, once the user logs in, does whatever it does, the recommendation is simply based on what the user had done before today. So irrespective of what the user does today, the recommendations don't change. And next time, next day when they update, next day, next time, or another session when they create, when the user creates after maybe 2 days, again if the user logs back, this is the activity which which he or she has done today will be taken into account. All right, so this is something. If you go by this method, and a lot of people go, because the complexity is less. Complexity is less because you don't need to give real-time prediction, so your latency is not important here. That is, in how much time you're going to make the prediction, that is not important here. All right, so that is easier thing to do. So you can do batch processing. All right, so because of this, sometimes we go by this recommendation also. But typically e-commerce websites go by a mix or hybrid kind of model, where they have some batch processing in terms of the predictions of the recommendations, and then they also do the recommendations in real time also. All right, and it's a combination of this. Like I already had certain recommendations for the user, so I knew that the user likes mobile phones, and the user likes jeans, and the user like books. All right, but right now I just saw that the user had logged in and the user is searching for maybe belts. So I'm also going to recommend certain belts to the user. I also saw that the user is only searching for niche brands, so some expensive brands. So I'm not going to show cheap quality belts to the user. I'm only going to show maybe some expensive belts. All right, I also saw from the user's taste that the user are more interested in maybe black and blue color, and not interested in some funky pink yellow colors. So I'm not going to show those colors to the user. All right, so this is something if you want to do, which is typically happens in almost all e-commerce website today, especially Amazon and Flipkart, where you want real-time prediction. That is, as the user clicks on anything, that event history is also has to be taken care and taken into account while giving the next prediction or next recommendation to the user. Like if I see that the user has clicked on certain coupons or certain vouchers, I know that the user is very price sensitive. So I should take in the next recommendation, I should take price as a factor also. And if there are certain deals available, like if you buy a belt with a jeans and then you get 10% extra discount, I should show those as recommendations to the users. So so this is something which is more complicated to do. But if this is the case, there the latency becomes very, very important. All right. So the idea which I was, the only thing which I wanted to explain here is, given the type of user and given how you are going to perform, your latency will become very important. And depending if the latency is important, your deployment strategy changes. Because in this particular case, what I would ideally want is, I would want a real-time serving deployment system where there should be a data ingestion system which should be a streaming service, because you require data to come in real time. So you need certain some sort of a streaming service, like maybe a Kafka or maybe a RabbitMQ or something like that, all right? Or maybe a big data processing layer. Second is the deployment. While doing the deployment, you might need actually some big data processing rather than simple processing, because you are doing predictions at a fly and latency is important for you. So maybe something like PySpark or some any other technology will be important. Third thing is, in terms of the deployment, how you're going to serve, maybe the end is the displays in the form of recommend in the form, the recommendations are still in the form of website. So there is some sort of dashboards or maybe simply just a web service which you need to create. So maybe you are not creating the website, but you are generating the output in the form of an API. So there again comes that you need to create an API for the deployment strategy. That is also depending on this. All right. While if we take the other scenarios, where even in scenario one, the other scenario of like, if you want to only generate and provide the output in the form of like past days history, like you are not concerned about events history every second, in that case maybe you don't require maybe a very high processing system. So there maybe you can say that, okay, I will just read the data from a database, so I don't need a Kafka, I don't need a RabbitMQ, because I don't need streaming data. What I need is, I need to have all the data till today or maybe a day before to till yesterday. So maybe every day at 9 p.m. at night, a batch job runs, which takes in all the data, makes all the prediction, again stores it somewhere in the data. And every time the user logs in, the software simply just looks up to have a lookup at that table with that user ID and provides the recommendation given that. All right, so there you can see latency is not important. There's deployment strategy changed because you don't need to convert into a real-time system, and so on, so on. All right, both are cool, both are nice. It all depends on the requirement. It all depends on the application. It all depends on what is required. All right. There is another scenario, which is again basically the second case which I was discussing, similar to that. What if it was not a recommendation system in terms of e-commerce website, but something like you want to send certain marketing mails? All right, so marketing mails where you send mails to the customer that these are the services which we are offering, and you have hundreds of services, right? So if you say or send a brochure of all the 100 services, maybe the user doesn't have time to read all those. What you want is, you want to do a customized service, customized mail to each individual users. So the users have only a flash of second to look up to that email. But if in that few seconds, if you just put the right services which the user requires, so maybe a recommended services, like for this user, you know that this user might be interested in these three services for me. So in that mail, you just provide the top three services, that these are something which you might be interested in. So that customized email might make an impact for that user, and then the user or the customer can revert back. All right. And this happens. It's not like this is completely irrelevant. A lot of things happen, like especially if you see about like different even with respect to different social media sites and all those, they try to recommend these things. So it could be related to products, it could be related to some social media services or anything, where they give you these recommendations. Ideally you will not have time to scroll through all everything. You will only invest a few seconds, maybe even less than a second, to just have a look. But in that less than a second or a few seconds, if something catches your eye which you think, yeah, we also require this, like let's say a mail from Flipkart, where they have Flipkart sale. All right. And within that Flipkart sale, if they display certain products in that email which you are actually searching maybe in the last few weeks, so maybe you are looking up towards a mobile phone which you haven't bought yet, but you suddenly see a mail that this mobile phone is going to come on sale on this particular date with extra 20% discount. You immediately it catches your eye. So if the mail which was sent to you was displaying the ad of a jeans which you are not interested, it would not have made sense to you, or you would not have been interested. But since it is so showing you a mobile phone with some discount which you are actually looking, then it catches your eye and you go back to the Flipkart page, and maybe you will search more about it, like what are the other things which are also available. All right. So there, as you can see, What I want to convey is there the output is important, but the processing time of the output is not that relevant. So maybe the latency is not that relevant. So the strategy again changes. The deployment strategy is changed by this. All right. Okay, so these are like a few scenarios which I wanted to discuss, and we are now. I hope that we have an understanding in terms of what do we mean by these scenarios. All right. So the idea was to, as I said, the idea was to try to understand what are the factors which are basically contribute towards our deployment strategies. All right. And again, just to reiterate the same thing, it's basically if I want to summarize these two examples or all the other examples which we have discussed, I can say that the deployment dependencies are going to be affected by these factors. All right. So as I had said, as we have discussed, now you can all agree upon like the frequency of the predictions is important for us, like how frequent it should be generated. All right. So if I want to generate the prediction, let's say in or 100 predictions per day, there may be something which is the latency might not be that relevant here. All right. So or whether do I want to generate as per user requirements, like whenever the user gives me a requirement to give me a prediction, then I give a prediction, or I need to provide predictions maybe every hour or every second or every minute or something like that. So the frequency, whether it is periodic or non-periodic, what exactly is the frequency, whether it is a high frequency, low frequency, that is definitely one of the important factors in selecting my deployment dependencies. All right. Next is whether the prediction is going to be made for single instance versus batch of instance. Again, same point. So like in terms of single versus batches, like if I'm waiting for input from the user and I need to give a prediction for that single sample of data, then it's a single instant. While if I'm doing a batch processing of 100 sample, 100 data, so a complete data file which I need to make a prediction, that is a batch prediction. All right. So depending on that, again the strategy might change. I might need to select certain job scheduling service in the deployment strategy. So I might use certain tools like cron jobs or airflow or any other scheduling service for that. All right. Depending on the application. Next, one of the very, very important factor which we have not yet discussed till now is how many users are going to access the application, right? So till now we have discussed about time, processing time. We have discussed like how fast we can serve the users. We did not discuss the scale of the users, that how many users should be accessing the model. All right, the output, that is very important. That is where network traffic will come in. So is your application such that typically on average only there is only one user at a time who is going to use the output of the model, or is the scenario where there could be thousands of users trying to use the same output? Specifically in the case of this, let's say this recommendation system which you saw in case of let's say this e-commerce website, there are thousands, not thousands, millions of users working, millions of users using the Amazon website or Flipkart website at a time. So your model which needs to give an output of for a particular user, so you have developed a model, it's very well, it provides output, let's say in 1 second, that is for this user given the activity, this is the product which should be recommended, top 3 product which should be recommended. Great. But your model is still a single instance model, that is it is a simple API which takes in one request and gives one output. Now, what if there is 1,000 requests in the same second? 1,000 users have different user IDs, and you need to generate different responses. So, simple if you deploy by a simple way of simply just creating, let's say, a Flask API or something, then what will happen is there will be users, there will be requests, there will be 1,000 requests. You will be able to serve one. You will ask the rest of them to wait, and then you will predict for the next, and then again wait. And what will happen is there will be huge latency. All right, or maybe some of them request will simply just fail, they will not wait. That is something which you don't want. All right, so the number of traffic, the number of users accessing the model is very relevant, and that is where you want to scale these things up. All right, and for scaling there comes different ways. I mean, like even in Flask you can scale it up by using multi concurrency, or you can go by a container orchestration system. So you can create containers of your model, solid document containers, and then you can scale it up based on the requirement. You can go for a simple platform based service model where you can host the containers, and the orchestration system itself takes care of the scaling of the traffic. Or you can go by a completely managed services, like simply in AWS you have things like Lambda, where The incoming request and traffic is being monitored or handled by the AWS itself. You don't need to worry about that. When there is more traffic, they replicate your service into multiple servers, and then they provide the output each parallelly. And whenever the traffic reduces, they again reduce it back. So you are doing the optimal utilization of it. All right. So what I'm trying to tell you here is the number of users or the incoming traffic is also very, very relevant and important for you to make the decision in terms of the deployment. All right. And obviously the latency requirement, which we have discussed till now, that latency is obviously one of the very crucial factors depending on what kind of application we are using. All right. Now, as we have discussed around all these points, so the challenges, as I said, like we have already discussed, like what could be the challenges. So now, if you understand all the factors related to the deployment, you will understand the challenges also. That is obviously depending on the scale of the user, depending the scale of the deployment, the depending on the latency. We will, if the latency requirement is very high, that is, we want very fast predictions, then obviously you need more compute power. So you can think in terms of the computation. So maybe the compute power could be related to both hardware and software. The hardware is basically related to the actual machines. So whether you need CPUs, which you need, what kind of CPUs do you need GPUs or not? All these decisions you need to make. All right. Also, there could be compute power related to software also, like some things like whether do you need parallel processing like Spark or Hadoop, or do you need simple CPU per single user, or you can use something like a multi-concurrency, multi-threading, multi-processing, things like that. All right. Next important factor challenge is portability and scalability. Portability and scalability means basically how can you scale this, right? So let's say once you have developed the solutions for, let's say, 10 users, in future if there are 100 users, can you scale this easily? So your deployment strategy should be such that you should be able to do that. All right. Now again, that will depend on the type of problem which you are solving, whether you foresee scaling or not in future. Because if you think that your users are not going to give you more than 10 in the next 10 years, there is no point in building a very highly scalable solution. There is no point in investing in parallel processing and things like that. All right. But if you foresee that, then your solution should take care of this account also. Robustify is basically related to whatever you deploy, how robust it is, so whether it's prone to failing or not. Now again, that will depend on the strategy and depend on the application. If your applications are very critical, like something like, let's say, in this finance industry, where banking industry, where if you do something wrong, let's say credit score system, so if you do something wrong here, maybe there could be lawsuits related to that. So that is where you might want to have the deployment strategies which is without fail, while in other scenarios maybe there is the you can accommodate certain failure. So that's also. And then testing and validation issues is related to, like, your deployment should not just about the prediction. Your deployment should also be taking care about, like, how you are going to validate your model, how you are going to retrain your model, how you are going to monitor the performance of your model. All right. So let's say whatever predictions you are making, it can change. There could be a data drift also. All right. So based on your predictions, the underlying data can itself change. So how are you going to take care of all this? All right. So basically, the idea was to give you all these factors which could be important. All right. So now you have an understanding, although we haven't uh, done any actual deployment here. The idea of this core session was to give you what exactly deployment is, what is the requirement, what are the factors which we should consider, and what are the challenges around it. So I hope all of these make sense. Now, before we conclude all of these, I would just like to take a few questions if you have, and then we can wind up the session. So if anyone has any questions related to what we have discussed today, you can share it now. Otherwise, we will conclude this session now.
Shajat,
Yeah,
um,
please go ahead.
so nowadays, when you give the interview as well, so they are asking about uh, how your deployment framework works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Uh,
so
yeah. So and deployment frameworks works and how you optimize that one. I mean, if something comes on fly that you have to give us that and how you will handle it. So, which is the right way? I mean,
so
uh,
so there is many as what we were discussing today is
mm,
it all depends on different factors. It all depends on the now. depending on how you are explaining in the interview, maybe you might be explaining a particular project for your current company,
Mhm.
but what they are interested in is how exactly it worked in your current organization or there, right? So
Okay.
there you might want to explain that this is the framework which used. But then there could be questions like, is this the optimal strategy? Can you do something else? Can you improve upon this? All right.
Mhm.
So let's say in your strategy it was like you are serving maybe in your application. Let's talk about this recommender system. So let's say for your organization you have developed a recommender system and you have converted in the form of an API, and that API is giving prediction. So you might say that my deployment framework is something like where we have the model. The model is wrapped inside a API. That
Mhm.
API is developed using Flask, and that Flask maybe you are hosting it as a Docker container, and that
Okay.
container is hosted in an on-premise server. That is your deployment framework, which you can say. Now the next question will come in from them is, what if right from 10 users you have suddenly increased to 1000 users? What will you do? All right. So
Mhm.
there your answer could be related to like, okay, I need a container scaler system. All right. So maybe a scale, something like a Kubernetes which can scale the containers on the fly. Or maybe you can think of it like, let's say if you, since I'm using a web service, so maybe I would go by some web service provider, like web service, like in AWS itself you have an option to host like AWS Beanstalk where I can
Okay.
host. So
Mhm.
depending on that, so I mean the tooling is important, but this is something which we have not discussed in our session, in terms of we did not focus on different tools. There are n
Okay.
number of tools which you can study, but these are the thought process is very important here, and that is what most of the time they are interested in. Like how do you think depending on individual application? You cannot you would not want to show them that you know one deployment strategy as you think that this is the only deployment strategy. What
Okay.
you want to show is there are n number of tools out there in the market. Depending, I don't know all of them, but depending on my requirement I can logically think and select those tooling mechanisms. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? I'd be happy to take, otherwise we can conclude the session. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining this session. I hope this session helped. All right. I wish you all the best and have a nice day.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Shajat.
Sajjad. Have a nice
Wonderful.
day.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vasha.
Thanks for job. We'll see you soon in another
Sure.
session.
Sure. Bye.